Okay, joining us today is none other than Shawn Redhage. Now, Shawn is a household name, particularly in Perth here. He's been a long-time Wildcat. He's represented Australia and has been a professional basketballer for most of his life. So, Shawn, thanks for joining us today. This will be going out to hundreds and hundreds of Hale boys, and I appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me, Luke. Just live down the road from Hale, so got a lot of respect for what you guys are doing there, and hopefully the boys are, coping well with the new challenges we have.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. It's a trying time. So we might talk through a little bit of your life. You were born in Florida, grew up in Nebraska, attended Lincoln East High School. What was school like for you there in Nebraska, and what sports did you play growing up?
Yeah, well, much different than, life probably in Perth. A lot warmer here, that's for sure. I think the closest beach was about 2,000 kilometers away, so I'm pretty appreciative of living here in Perth. But yeah, Nebraska, it's an agricultural state, so just growing up we grew up in Lincoln, which is a bigger city. We got about 200,000, but high school sport, especially gridiron, is massive there. Their college team gets over I think these days it's almost 95,000
wow.
people to their college football games, and everyone's wearing red, pretty similar to the Wildcats. I'd say just a lot less in numbers. So most of the kids growing up in Nebraska want to play gridiron.
Okay, and in terms of your school sport experience over there, did you basketball mainly, and how does it compare to school sport here that you've seen in Perth?
Yeah, well, actually growing up, my first love was soccer. So I played a lot of soccer. I was on traveling teams, went across the country and played that. But probably as I got to about 14, 15, I really kind of, there wasn't many 6'5" soccer players running around. So I figured, basketball was probably something more in my cards, especially with the height that I had. So, I played, so I kind of started to focus on basketball a little bit more. Still played soccer. A lot of my mates were soccer players, so that was kind of my outlet. I didn't, I really enjoyed soccer season, which was in the spring. But then basketball was kind of my main focus. So I played, played high school sports, and there high school sports is pretty big. We would, Friday night, if we were playing a local team, another high school in the city of Lincoln, we might get 2,000 fans to the games, and the entire student section there is cheering, and it's a fun atmosphere to play in. So I was fortunate. I think it's kind of a unique system that they have over there, but looking back on it, it was a really enjoyable time.
Yeah, that'd be amazing at that age to play in front of that kind of fan base. And from Nebraska, you went to Arizona State University, or ASU, one of the biggest colleges for sport in the country, also where James Harden was an alumni. You were there for 4 years, graduating with a Bachelor of Construction. Can you give us a bit of an insight? Like, some of our boys might have aspirations to go to college overseas. What was it like? Both, probably academic and lifestyle was college at ASU.
Yeah, well, it's a big step up from high school. You're expected to. It's almost like having a full-time job, but also also being a full-time student. So. It's a big industry over there, the college sports, and I was lucky enough. There was only, I think, in the state of Nebraska, there was only 2 kids that ended up, 2 basketball players ended up playing Division I basketball out of the entire state. We've got probably 2 million people in Nebraska, so I was pretty lucky to get the scholarship, go to Arizona State, which that was the other thing. It was in one of the top conferences in the country, the Pac-12, which it is now. It was Pac-10 back then, but. All of a sudden, in Nebraska, you're kind of the big fish in the little pond, and all of a sudden you become the little fish in a big pond. Arizona State, 50,000 students. Just to walk from one end of the campus to the other end is probably about a 45-minute walk. So It was, the first year especially takes a lot of adjustment. There's homesickness. There's a lot of, I'd imagine if an Australian going over there, it'd be tough that first year. But after that first year, you really start to settle in on the lifestyle. But it is tough. I mean, you are up at 5, 6 a.m. going to do workouts. Then you go to class. You just, you can barely keep your eyes open because you're in class because you're so tired after a 2-hour sprint session or something in the weight room. And then you got training out in the afternoon. And then, you might go back and work out again with some of the guys at the nighttime. And then you still got studies as well. So it takes a lot of self-discipline, but it was an awesome experience.
Yeah. Now, college sport, for us in Australia, there's not really a thing, but more so than professional sport, it seems to create such a connection between player and college. Like you look at, Kevin Durant at the University of Texas. He was only there, I think, for a year and has been so generous with money back to them. All the Duke alumni in basketball, Steph Curry and Davidson, all the Aussies, including Matt Dellavedova that's gone to St. Mary's, Andrew Gaze at Seton Hall. Why in America across all sports, why do you think your college means so much to the athlete compared to the rest of the world?
Well, I think it's just you really have that sense of pride. I mean, high school as well, but then it's probably another step up when you get to that college, and there's a sense of pride with everyone. It doesn't matter if you played sport there or you were a student or even if you just live in the community, you just got a sense of pride for the school that you root for and you play for. So you do see a lot of alumni coming back. You talk about Arizona State, James Harden. He's still in some of his shoes. I think he'll put the Sun Devil on there and use the colors of ASU. So it really is it's a unique thing that college sports has, and for anyone that does get that opportunity to just experience it or just go over and be able to watch it, it's almost some of the facilities over there at the college level are actually better than even at the professional level, and that probably surprises some people to some regards. But I mean, you go to like the University of Nebraska, you go into their locker room is just incredible. I mean, they've got iPads on every locker with the player's face on there, and they've got every imaginable thing in, whether it be video games, pool tables, big lounge room. It's an incredible facility that they have.
Yeah, and I imagine it's probably a discussion for a different day, but a lot of that stems from just the financial structure around college athletes. They don't get paid, yet the colleges bring in so much revenue from sponsorships, broadcast deals. Just like a professional team, they just don't have the same expenses, do they? So
yeah, that's right. That's right. They get free labor. That is a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have that discussion because I regularly, my wife and I discuss that on a regular basis.
Yeah. So going ASU, from a basketball standpoint, did you get to play in what we consider March Madness? And over your whole career, was there one match for ASU that stands out above all others?
So when I got to Arizona State, we had they just had gotten a new coach, Rob Evans, brought him in, and ASU hadn't really had a lot of success in the past, and so they hadn't been in an NCAA tournament, I think, in 6 years by the time I got there, and we finally got there my senior year. So it was a huge accomplishment. We kind of went through a lot of challenges and tribulations through those 4 years, but yeah, to be able to play in March Madness it was one of the highlights of my career. And we actually played first round. I think we were a 10 seed. We played the University of Memphis, who they've got John Calipari was their coach, who's now at Kentucky, and they were the favorites to beat us, and we ended up winning game one against them, and then we ended up losing to the runners up that year, Kansas, in the second round. But yeah, it was an awesome experience and something, when you get your name called out and your team's name to play in March Madness, it was a special moment.
Yeah, and finally, just on your college career, the best players you played with or against?
Look, when I first got there, there was a guy on our team, Eddie House, who played in the NBA for a long time, played with the Celtics kind of during that run where they just a flat-out shooter. He was probably the best player that I played with in college. He scored 61 points. Him and I combined, I think, for 76 one game.
Oh, yeah.
He had 61 of them. So it was an incredible, and it was against a team that he grew up in that area, but they didn't recruit him, so he had a little chip on his shoulder and wanted to kind of prove, 61 points against them. It was actually interesting because I played at Arizona State. We were the Sun Devils, and our rivals in the state were the Arizona Wildcats. So they were always the best team. Usually in our conference, they had, Richard Jefferson. They had a lot of NBA players. Yeah. Luke Walton, who was the coach of the Lakers. Yeah. Now he's at the Sacramento Kings, so I played against him. So there's some really good players that you probably got a chance to play against, which was fun. Yeah.
Now, following college, your professional career took you to kind of all corners of the globe. There was Tasmania, Bendigo, Puerto Rico, New Zealand, and Perth, and those 5 destinations there are not on everyone's journey. But for most of the boys listening, it obviously be the time with the Wildcats that they'll most remember. Now, you played here for 13 seasons. You captained 4 NBA titles, selected on the All NBL first team twice. Were part of what I think is an amazing record potentially across all sports, that they've made the playoffs maybe 32 or 33 straight times. Now, without giving away too much, not that I think any of the other NBL franchises listening, but what's the secret sauce at the Wildcats? Why have you had such longevity of success?
It's hard to get that question a lot. It's hard to put it down to one thing, but I think there's a combination of things. First, I think it's the caliber of people that they recruit. So if you come into the Wildcats, and although if you're a great player, if you don't really buy into the team environment and the team system and the role that the coach has for you, you're not going to be there very long. I've seen that with a few players that have come in. It's always hard to know from the outset if that player is going to fit in and get a buy-in. But I know if they don't, within a season or two, they won't be there that long. So one, it's just the type of players and people that they recruit. When you get to that professional level, the skill level and difference in skill level between, you look at the NBL, you get the 100 best basketball players in Australia. The skill level difference isn't that massive between the majority of the players. Now, you look at a guy like Bryce Cotton, his skill level is higher than most guys. Yeah. But for the majority of guys, the skill level. So then it becomes who's going to fit the right role, and also recruiting to the role. Look at a guy like Greg Heyer, who's, people wouldn't say is the most skilled player, but man, he was invaluable for us and what he could do and provide and the impact he would have off the bench. So, and just the hustle and the toughness that he played with. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is, I think there's a huge advantage with the Red Army and the crowd. Yeah. It's to come out and play in front of 12, 13,000 fans on a nightly basis, it is a huge advantage. And you add in the travel as well. Teams got to travel over here. And then I think the last part is probably just the expectation. I mean, sometimes having high expectations, when you've got to compete for a championship every year, it really makes you focus on that and really compete at a high level, knowing that if you don't make the playoffs or you don't compete for a championship, you won't be here very long. No, that's a great answer and a good insight into the culture there. Now, at Hale, we talk a little bit about
or a lot about, being the best team player or teammate you can be. Now, in your career, is there someone that, not necessarily the best player, but the best teammate, and why would you say that person?
Oh, look, I already mentioned one guy, Greg Heyer, that, a lot of your, but I'll mention another guy, Jesse Wagstaff. He's sitting on 6 NBL titles at the moment. He's never been a starter. He's maybe started a few games here and there, but for the majority of his career, he's always come off the bench. You watch the bench, he'll be standing up. He'll be the first guy standing up when someone makes a shot. Doesn't matter if the team's going well, not doing, having a little tough patch during a game. He's always the first one to meet every player at a high five when they come off the bench. So, and then he just comes in, knows his role, and is just almost unflappable. So those guys, there's a reason why he's been with the Wildcats for 11, 12 seasons now, is he's just, he's invaluable to what he can bring. And, you don't have to be the star player, but you've got to be a star in your role. Yeah. So what's one of the things we talk about is everyone's got a role. You got to try and be a superstar in your role. And if you do that, all 12 guys, 11, 10 guys are able to do that, you're going to go a long way to having success.
Yeah, and I think that's, and that sometimes is difficult for teenage athletes to pick up, and the earlier they understand that, the better. Now,
well, let me go into that a little bit more as well, Luke, because you're going to have that throughout, like even through my journey. There's times where, I had the nickname the scoring machine, where I was expected to score 20 points a night. Yeah. And there's other times on teams where, I was expected to be the punch off the bench, or, I even remember going back when I was just started playing basketball. I think my high was like 2 points one season, but coach asked me to be the defender. Yeah. And so I was supposed to try and lock down the other team's best player. So I think there's a lot of valuable things in that. If you can find the role, and it doesn't mean that's going to be your role for the rest of your life, but if you can excel in that role, it just expands your game to the following seasons as well. Yeah, no, it's great advice. Now, we've talked about, some of your highlights of your career, but I'm sure there are a few hurdles along the way. And do you remember a particular period where things weren't great, how you got through it, and what advice would you give to boys who are having their own battles? They're obviously all at home now, can't play sport. That might be getting them a little bit down, and there might be, things financially in the family now. There's, a lot going on in the world at the moment. How does some of your downtimes help you get through that? There's a couple in there. That's probably one of the things. I go back to when I was in high school, and I was playing in a tournament. Someone undercut me, and I landed on my arm, and I broke my arm. And I remember seeing, obviously had the cast on. I remember seeing my coach a few days later, and he looked at me, and I was like, "Oh, look, I'm out for 8 to 10 weeks." He's like, "That's great. Now you can just work on your left hand." And I thought about that, and he's all excited. He's like, "This is the best time for you to be able to really develop your left hand." And this was when I was probably 14, 15. Still to this day, I actually prefer to drive left, because I was spending, all time, for the next 8 to 10 weeks when I was working out, I was using my left hand, and now it's actually my strength, being able to use my left hand and drive left. And so it developed this, I guess, philosophy that you look at a situation and try and find a positive out of it. You look at a situation where you've got to be at home, try and, we're able to coach a lot of players. This is the greatest time where you can really develop your skill. You're not playing so-and-so games. You can really develop the skill, and develop some new skills within that. And then when you come back and you're able to play games again, you've got a new repertoire, and it makes it even more fun. So, that was probably one of the first things I would think about. Yeah. Just trying to find some positives in a situation. So I would just encourage you to, if obviously we play to want to play the games, and that's the joy of it. To me, I love the process of trying to develop new skill and find ways to get better.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. Our first 18 coaches told our boys that, in this period, however long it may go for, it's, if you're driven, this is an opportunity to separate yourselves from others, and because not everyone will be that driven and to work on their skills. But there's, it is an opportunity to, get yourself picked or improve on what you can do.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, and and it doesn't have to be overnight, but just try and do something every day to improve yourself. So whether it be a new skill or find some area of your game where you're not great, or you want to improve on, and just do a little bit of something every day, and that'll build up, and you'll see a lot of improvement in a very short time. Yeah.
Now, the last thing I want to touch on is probably a very special time in your career was when you represented the Boomers at the Olympic Games in 2008. Can you tell us, before we get into the basketball side of things, but what's it like being an Olympic athlete at the Olympic Village? The connections with the other Australian teams, how was that kind of 2 weeks of your life?
Yeah, it was a bit surreal. I think it was one of those things that growing up in the U.S. kind of not really a possibility. I mean, I'm probably going to have to beat out Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James, and Chris Paul, those type of guys, to make an Olympic team. So when I got my citizenship in January of 2008, and then was able to try out for the team, and actually made the team, it was I think everyone has an appreciation for being an Olympian, and obviously probably a highlight of most people's career, but it wasn't even a realm of possibility for me. So when growing up, I didn't really think that was going to be possible. So it meant a lot to me. The Olympics are such a unique environment. You're in an Olympic village. I think there's 20,000 athletes walking around, and you got this dining hall that's the size of an airport pretty much. And got some of the best athletes in the world over there, all eating together. So it's a pretty unique, I guess, event and scenario, and something you just try. Just walking out in the opening ceremonies was incredible. Yeah.
Now, part of the Boomers at the Olympics, you had a 19-year-old Patty Mills, 20-year-old Joe Ingles, 23-year-old Andrew Bogut. Being around those three, obviously Andrew Bogut, I think, had already gone number one in the NBA draft, but did you have any inkling, Patty and Joe, that they would be destined to have such great NBA careers, just being around them at that time?
Well, the Olympics was kind of Patty Mills' coming out party. He played well in college, but I think people weren't really sure if he could translate that to the NBA. But I think we played against the Team USA before the Olympics. Yeah. And Patty Mills played really well against them, and then we played them in the Olympics. They actually knocked us out in the quarterfinals. And I think Patty had another 20 points on, and this is against Chris Paul, Jason Kidd, some of the best players at their position to ever play. So it was, to me, that you kind of saw that right away, just the speed and his skill level was at another level. Andrew Bogut, he had just signed his $50 million deal with Milwaukee. So he joined us kind of late because the insurance on his deal didn't kick in until July 1st. So he kind of joined us about a month after everyone. I still remember the first training session. He dunked on everyone at least one time during that training session. I just walked away. These are the best players Australia had, and he just made us all look like we were, kindergartners out there. It was his athleticism was the next level. And you talk about Joe Ingles. It's actually been pretty surprising to me how impactful he's been able to go in the NBA. Credit to him and just getting that, getting those opportunities. He was playing over in Europe and was hardly playing on his Maccabi Tel Aviv team in Israel. And then next year he goes and tries out with the LA Clippers. they actually cut him. And then he gets a chance with the Utah Jazz, and now he's incredible. He's probably the best Australian player outside of Ben Simmons at the moment. The numbers he's putting up and the impact he's having. So credit to him, and just and you talk about just getting that opportunity and making the most of it. He's done that.
Yeah, to think back then, if I was to tell you Joe Ingles I'm pretty sure he was, won the NBA 3-point percentage 2 seasons ago. You probably would have laughed. He probably would have laughed at you as well if someone was to tell you that. So now those three, it seems, to the public, they have such a passion for representing their country. They talk about it in public a lot. And seem so determined to finish their international careers with a basketball medal, which would be Australia's first. The delayed Olympics, do you think this is still achievable next year? Obviously, Andrew Bogut's a year older. The other two are probably still in what they consider their prime. Do you think Australia can win a medal at next year's Olympics?
Oh, absolutely. Think they're you got another year of Ben Simmons growing as a player potentially, and Patty Mills. You're right. I mean, he's just been the heart and soul of that team for so long. I love how passionate he is about playing, and all those guys. Dellavedova. The one you probably question is Bogut. He's been a little bit injured this year, and he's come out and said that he's not sure if he'll be able to continue playing. So. You hope for Bogut's sake, because he was kind of that pioneer of Australians into the NBA.
Yeah.
During this period. He kind of started. Obviously, Luke Longley was kind of that real first one, but I think throughout this period, Bogut's kind of been the kind of opened the doors for a lot of players. So I hope that they can kind of send him out with a medal, because it's been heartbreaking the last Olympics and the world champs for them not to walk away. I loved the way they were playing. They definitely represented Australia extremely well, and they were fun to watch.
Yeah. Now, that Olympic campaign of yours, so that ended, and you mentioned this quarterfinal loss to the USA. So on the team, is almost a who's who of the NBA Hall of Fame. You go Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, Chris Paul. I could keep going there. That quarterfinal match against them, what do you remember of that game?
Well, we played them before the Olympics. We played them in Shanghai, and we actually gave them a pretty tough game. I think they ended up beating us by 11 in the end, and it ended up being, I think, the closest that anyone played them in the lead up to the Olympics, and then in the Olympics as well. No one got even closer to that.
Yeah.
So we played them pretty well. They just came out, and I think they were pretty motivated knowing that we had played them tough. So they got up by 20 pretty quickly in that game, and it was always going to be a tough one. The hard one for us is we had lost the first game against, I think it was Lithuania. No. We lost against Croatia, and we lost against Argentina to start the tournament, and we won our next 3. But if we had beat Argentina or Croatia, we would have finished top of our pool, and we would have played China to get into the medal round.
And avoided America for a while, I imagine.
Avoided America. So that one game took us from first to fourth in our pool, so we had to play Team USA. So that's kind of who you want to, avoid. But, it was an awesome. The only good thing about getting knocked out is that then you could go and actually really enjoy the Olympics a little bit more, go and see all the other sports, because you're not so consumed with. So I was trying to go to every sport I could, and ended up getting. I was courtside on the gold medal game when America beat Spain, who had a pretty good team there that year as well. So you're seeing those guys receive their gold medals. And I actually thought on that team the best player was Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, okay.
He was such a tough cover, and just so shifty. I thought, really impressed with Carmelo. Obviously, LeBron and Kobe Bryant, they're going to stand on their own. But to me, Carmelo and Dwayne Wade were the toughest covers for us.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I'll go to 2 questions we've been asking everyone that we've interviewed, very much on a light-hearted note. I moved from Sydney 4 years ago, and Birkenstocks. Now, it seems to be a bit of a craze over here, Shawn. You've lived here for quite a long time. Fair to say those on the East Coast would consider them like footwear that's more suitable to biblical times. Do you have a pair? And I suppose, what are your views on them?
Well, look, they always say fashion comes back into style. So I don't know if I'm showing my age here, but, I've actually had a pair of Birkenstocks for about 10, 15 years. So they were pretty big when I was in high school. So that was about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It seems like they're making a comeback now. So, I definitely have a pair. I don't wear them a whole lot, but, the good thing about Birkenstocks is they last forever.
Yeah, no, that is true. Despite how unhygienic they probably are in this age, they do last. Now the last question, meat pie. So as a bit of background, here on Tuesdays is pie day at school, where all the boarders and all the staff get a pie. Now, some of what the boarders do to their pies is pretty controversial in terms of how they eat them. Some will excavate, take the roof off, put the sauce in the pie, and then some even attack that with a spoon or a fork. Some put the roof back on. How does Shawn Redhage, probably growing up in Nebraska, there weren't a lot of pies, I'm guessing, but now you've been here for so long. How does Shawn Redhage eat a meat pie?
Oh, look, yeah, we definitely didn't have meat pies. We had a lot of corn in Nebraska. So I think, every country's kind of got their go-to favorite snack. I don't eat a lot of meat pies, but when I do, I'm a huge fan of barbecue sauce.
Okay.
So, I like to throw barbecue sauce on just about anything I can. Just kind of reminds me of growing up back in Nebraska. So that's kind of what I'll use on a meat pie.
Oh, fantastic. So, Shawn, we'll wrap it up there. I'll let you get on with your day, but thanks so much for joining us. Like, I'm sure the kids that are all parts of Western Australia listening to this, are in awe of your journey, all that you've achieved, both domestically for Australia and then overseas. You have a lot to be proud of, and hopefully we can keep you involved around Hale and get basketball happening as soon as possible for everyone around this country again.
No, thanks for having me, Luke. And, I just wish everyone all the best during these challenging times. And, I'm sure we're all looking forward to getting back out on the sporting field in the near future.
Fantastic, Shawn. Thanks for that, and you stay safe.